I never thought a glass of champagne would change my life forever. The amber liquid tasted sweeter than usual, with an underlying metallic note that should have warned me. But the pulsing bass of the nightclub, the celebration of our company's successful season finale, and the rare night off from rehearsals had dulled my usual caution. My fellow dancers from the Metropolitan Ballet Company surrounded me, their laughter mixing with the thumping music as we toasted another sold-out performance of Swan Lake. The crystal chandelier above our VIP section cast fractured light across my sequined dress, a vintage piece I'd found at a thrift store and altered myself. It clung to my dancer's body like liquid silver, the fabric moving with each breath I took. Around me, the exclusive nightclub velvet pulsed with life, its crimson walls and gold accents creating an atmosphere of decadent luxury that felt foreign to someone who lived on a dancer's salary. "Tessa, you were absolutely stunning tonight," called Marcus, our principal male dancer, his voice cutting through the music. That final arabesque in Act 4 had the entire audience holding their breath. He moved closer, his cologne mixing with the club's ambient scent of expensive perfume and aged whiskey. I smiled, feeling the compliment warm me more than the champagne. 3 years of grinding poverty, of choosing between groceries and New Point shoes, of sleeping on friends' couches when rent was due, had led to this moment. I was finally a featured soloist with the company, my name in the program, my photograph in the lobby display case. The little girl who used to practice pirouettes in her grandmother's tiny kitchen had made it. "Thank you," I replied, lifting the champagne flute to my lips again. The taste seemed even stranger now, almost bitter. I still can't believe this is real. 5 years ago, I was waiting tables and taking classes at the community center. My best friend Sarah, a core member with dreams as big as mine, squeezed my shoulder. "You deserve this, Tess. All those years of 18-hour days, the sacrifices, the injuries you danced through, it's finally paying off." The club's atmosphere grew hazier as the night progressed. Smoke machines released occasional puffs of silver mist that caught the laser lights, creating an otherworldly effect. The marble floors, polished to mirror perfection, reflected the dancing bodies and clinking glasses. Everything felt dreamlike, ethereal, as if I were floating through a scene from one of our ballets. But something was wrong. The room had begun to spin slowly, like a music box ballerina on her pedestal. My limbs felt heavy, unresponsive in a way that had nothing to do with fatigue from performing. I tried to focus on Sarah's face, but her features kept blurring at the edges. "I need some air," I managed to say, though my voice sounded distant even to my own ears. The words felt thick on my tongue, requiring effort to form properly. Sarah's brow furrowed with concern. "Are you okay? You look pale." Her hand reached toward my forehead, but I was already moving, or trying to move. Each step felt like walking through quicksand. The club's layout, which had seemed familiar moments before, now appeared labyrinthine. The bathrooms were somewhere past the bar, beyond the dance floor where bodies moved in hypnotic waves. I gripped the brass railing of the staircase leading to the main floor, my knuckles white against the metal. The music grew louder, or perhaps my hearing had become more sensitive. Every beat of the bass drum reverberated through my chest like a second heartbeat. The laughter around me took on an echoing quality, as if I were hearing it from underwater. Something was definitely wrong with me, but I couldn't form the thought clearly enough to act on it. Halfway to the bathroom, my legs gave out. The world tilted sideways, and I felt myself falling, the marble floor rushing up to meet me. But instead of cold stone, I found myself caught by strong arms, lifted against a broad chest that smelled of cedar and expensive cologne. "Easy there!" A deep voice rumbled above me, the words carrying a slight accent I couldn't place. Italian, perhaps, with the refined edges that spoke of education and power. "I've got you." Through my hazy vision, I glimpsed a face that belonged in a Renaissance painting. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with the kind of perfectly maintained stubble that suggested careful grooming rather than neglect. His eyes were the color of dark chocolate, almost black in the club's dim lighting, and they held an intensity that should have alarmed me. "Please," I whispered, though I wasn't sure what I was asking for. Help? Rescue? My tongue felt thick and uncooperative, and forming words required tremendous effort. "Shh," he soothed, his hand smoothing back my hair with surprising gentleness. "Don't try to talk. You're safe now." Safe. The word should have comforted me, but something in his tone, possessive and certain, sent a shiver of unease through my drugged consciousness. His arms tightened around me as he carried me away from the crowd, away from the music and lights, toward a private exit I hadn't noticed before. The cool night air hit my face as we emerged into an alley behind the club. A sleek black car waited, its engine purring softly. The driver's door opened to reveal a man in an expensive suit, who nodded respectfully at my rescuer. Everything about the scene spoke of preparation, of planning. "Who?" I tried to ask, but the word came out as barely a whisper. "My name is Dante," he said, settling me into the car's leather interior with the care one might use handling precious crystal. "Dante Russo, and you, beautiful dancer, are coming home with me." The car door closed with a soft click that sounded like a prison gate. Through the tinted windows, I watched the club's neon lights fade into the distance as we drove through the city's dark streets. My last coherent thought before the drug claimed me completely was that I should be afraid, that this was wrong, that no one knew where I was going. But Dante's hand covered mine on the seat between us, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my skin. And somehow, terrifyingly, I felt safer than I had in years. When consciousness began to return, it came in fragments, the whisper of expensive sheets against my skin, the scent of gardenias drifting through an open window, the gentle pressure of someone's hand in my hair, fingers combing through the strands with infinite patience. I wasn't in my tiny studio apartment. The mattress beneath me felt like a cloud, nothing like the lumpy futon I'd salvaged from a friend's move. The pillow my cheek rested against smelled of lavender and something indefinably masculine. When I tried to open my eyes, even the filtered sunlight streaming through what must have been heavy curtains felt too bright. "There you are," that same deep voice from the club said softly. I was beginning to worry. Memory came rushing back in a flood of panic. The club, the champagne, the feeling of being drugged, strong arms carrying me away. I bolted upright, immediately regretting the sudden movement as the room spun around me. My hands flew to my body, checking that I was still clothed. To my relief, I wore what appeared to be an expensive silk nightgown, not my own clothes, but decent and covering. "You changed my clothes," I accused, my voice hoarse and unfamiliar. Dante sat in an armchair beside the enormous bed, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle. In the daylight, he was even more devastatingly handsome than I'd remembered, but there was something dangerous in his casual confidence, in the way he watched me with those dark eyes. "Elena changed your clothes," he corrected, gesturing toward a woman I hadn't noticed standing by the window. She was perhaps 60, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon, and kind eyes that seemed out of place in whatever this situation was. "She's been taking care of you. You've been sleeping for nearly 12 hours. 12 hours? I struggled to piece together a timeline. I need to get home. I have rehearsal today, and people will be worried about me. My voice grew stronger, as righteous anger began to burn through the lingering effects of whatever I'd been given. Dante's expression remained calm, almost amused. "I've already called the ballet company. Told them you were feeling unwell and wouldn't be in today." the casual way he'd inserted himself into my life, made decisions for me, sent ice through my veins. You had no right to do that. You don't even know me. But I do know you, Tessa Marie Carmichael. The use of my full name, which wasn't common knowledge, made my blood freeze. 24 years old, born in Portland, Oregon. Moved to New York 5 years ago to pursue your dancing career. Parents died in a car accident when you were 19. No siblings, no close family. You live alone in a studio apartment on the Lower East Side. Work at a coffee shop on your days off to supplement your dancer's salary. Each fact he recited felt like a violation, proof that this wasn't chance or impulse but something planned and calculated. How do you know all that? I make it my business to know about things that interest me. He leaned forward slightly, his intense gaze never leaving my face. And you, cara mia, interest me very much. The endearment in what I now recognized as definitely Italian sent another chill through me. What do you want from me? Dante stood, his movements fluid and controlled, like a predator who never revealed his full capabilities. He approached the bed slowly, and I fought the urge to scramble backward like a cornered animal. I want you to understand your situation, he said, his tone still gentle but carrying an undertone of absolute authority. You were drugged last night, but not by me. Someone at that club slipped something into your drink with the intention of taking advantage of you. I intervened. So you took advantage of me instead? My voice shook with a mixture of fear and indignation. I saved you, he corrected, a flash of something darker crossing his features. The man who drugged you works for someone who considers me an enemy. He was going to use you to send me a message. The words didn't make sense. I don't know you. Why would anyone use me to get to you? Dante was close enough now that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could smell that cedar cologne that seemed to be his signature scent. Because I've been watching you, Tessa, for months. Every performance, every coffee shop shift, every late-night walk home from rehearsal. You fascinated me from the moment I first saw you dance. The admission should have terrified me, and it did. But there was something else mixed with the fear. A traitorous flutter of attraction to this dangerous, powerful man who spoke about stalking me as if it were romantic devotion. That's not romantic, I whispered, though my body betrayed me by responding to his proximity. That's stalking. In my world, the distinction matters less than the outcome. His hand lifted toward my face, then stopped just short of touching me, giving me the choice to pull away. When I didn't move, his fingers traced the line of my cheek with devastating gentleness. You're safe here, Tessa. Safer than you've ever been in your life. Safe from everyone but you, I managed to say, even as my skin burned where he touched me. His smile was slow and predatory. You're beginning to understand. The mansion revealed itself gradually over the next few hours, each room more opulent than the last. Dante had given me a tour after I'd refused to stay in bed any longer, my dancer's discipline rebelling against inactivity even in captivity. The marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. Original paintings lined the walls, not reproductions, but actual masterpieces that belonged in museums. Monet, I breathed, stopping before a water lily painting that seemed to glow with inner light. Despite everything, my artistic soul couldn't help but appreciate the beauty surrounding me. You have a good eye, Dante said, moving to stand behind me. His presence was a constant warmth at my back, never quite touching but always there. That one is my favorite. There's something about the way he captured light on water that reminds me of watching you dance. The comparison should have flattered me, but coming from him, it felt like another chain being wrapped around my soul. How long have you been planning this?" "Planning what?" His voice held innocent curiosity that I didn't believe for a second. I turned to face him, anger giving me courage. "Don't play games with me. The private exit at the club, the car waiting, knowing exactly where to take me. None of that was improvised." Dante's expression grew serious, the charming mask slipping to reveal something colder underneath. "You're right. I've been preparing for the possibility that you might need my protection for quite some time." "Your protection from what, exactly?" Before he could answer, a man appeared in the doorway of the gallery where we stood. He was younger than Dante, perhaps in his early 30s, with the kind of casual good looks that belonged on magazine covers. But his eyes held the same dangerous intelligence I was learning to recognize. "Dante," he said, his voice carrying a slight New York accent. "We need to talk." Dante's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Marco, meet Tessa. Tessa, this is my cousin Marco." Marco's gaze swept over me with professional assessment, taking in everything from my borrowed silk robe to my defensive posture. "The dancer," he said, not a question but a confirmation. "Beautiful. I can see why you're taken with her." The casual way they discussed me, as if I weren't standing right there, ignited my temper. "I'm right here, you know, and I'm not taken with anyone." Marco's eyebrows rose, and he looked between Dante and me with obvious amusement. "She's got spirit. That's good. She'll need it." "Need it for what?" I demanded. But Dante was already moving, his hand settling at the small of my back with possessive familiarity. "Elena will show you to the library," he said, his tone brooking no argument. "We'll continue our conversation after I handle some business." The dismissal stung, but I lifted my chin defiantly. "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's happening. You can't just keep me here against my will." Dante turned to face me fully, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something truly dangerous in his expression. Not the controlled threat that had been lurking beneath the surface, but actual menace that made my breath catch in my throat. "Can't I?" he asked softly. "Tessa, darling, I think you're still under the impression that you have choices here. Let me clarify something for you." He stepped closer, forcing me to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. This close, I could see the faint scar that ran along his jawline, could feel the heat radiating from his body through the thin silk of my robe. "Yesterday you were nobody," he continued, his voice a velvet-wrapped blade. "A talented dancer, yes, but invisible to the powers that control this city. Today, you are under the protection of Dante Russo. Do you know what that name means?" I shook my head, though something cold was settling in my stomach. "It means that half the judges in this city owe me favors. It means that police commissioners take my calls at 3 a.m. It means that when I want something to happen, it happens. And when I want something to disappear." He let the sentence hang in the air like a sword. "You're threatening me," I whispered. "I'm explaining reality." His hand cupped my face, thumb tracing my lower lip with agonizing gentleness. "You belong to me now, Tessa. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for both of us." The casual possessiveness in his voice should have sent me running, but trapped as I was in his dark gaze, I found myself frozen like a deer in headlights. There was something hypnotic about his absolute certainty, as if he could bend reality to his will through sheer force of personality. "I don't belong to anyone," I managed to say, though my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Dante's smile was sharp as a blade. "We'll see about that." He released me and turned to Marco, switching to rapid Italian that I couldn't understand, but that clearly involved heated discussion. I caught a few words. Santoro repeated several times, "warehouse," and something that sounded like message. Elena appeared at my elbow with the silent efficiency of a well-trained servant. "Come, miss," she said in accented English. I show you library. Very beautiful. Many books. I followed her through corridors lined with more artwork than most galleries, my bare feet silent on Persian rugs that probably cost more than my annual rent. The library, when we reached it, was indeed breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling shelves held leather-bound volumes in multiple languages, and tall windows overlooked gardens that seemed to stretch for acres. Mr. Dante, he loves books, Elena said, settling me into a velvet armchair beside a fireplace where actual logs crackled invitingly. He reads much, speaks many languages, very intelligent man. Very dangerous man, I corrected, accepting the cup of tea she pressed into my hands. Elena's expression grew careful, the open friendliness dimming slightly. Dangerous to his enemies, yes, but to you? She shrugged eloquently. He looks at you like you are a precious thing, not dangerous. Before I could respond to that unsettling observation, the library door opened and a woman entered who made my breath catch. She was absolutely stunning, with the kind of classical beauty that graced fashion magazines. Long black hair cascaded down her back, and her designer dress clung to curves that seemed mathematically perfect. So you're the little dancer, she said, her voice carrying a slight accent that might have been French. I'm Sofia Santoro. The surname Santoro sent a chill through me. I'd heard Marco and Dante mention that name with obvious tension. This had to be connected somehow. Tessa Carmichael, I replied, standing automatically despite my disadvantage in the borrowed robe. Sophia's eyes swept over me with cold assessment, taking in everything from my disheveled hair to my bare feet. Dante's taste has always been interesting, though I admit I expected someone more sophisticated. The insult was delivered with such casual cruelty that it took a moment to fully register. When it did, anger flared in my chest, burning away some of the fear and confusion. I'm sorry. Are you someone I should know? I asked, letting ice creep into my voice. Sophia's laugh was like crystal breaking. Oh, you really don't know anything, do you? How delicious. She moved to pour herself a drink from a crystal decanter, her movements graceful and deliberate. I'm Dante's fiancé. The words hit me like a physical blow. Whatever game Dante was playing, whatever this twisted kidnapping was about, he was engaged to someone else. The possessive words, the gentle touches, the way he'd called me cara mia, all of it was the manipulations of a man who already belonged to another woman. Fiancé, I repeated, my voice hollow. For 3 years now, Sophia continued, clearly enjoying my shock. Though the wedding has been postponed, Dante has a tendency to become distracted by his various projects. Projects. As if I were nothing more than a hobby, a temporary amusement for a man who collected beautiful things. Does he often kidnap women? I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Sophia's expression sharpened with genuine interest. Kidnap? Is that what you think this is? She moved closer, her heels clicking on the hardwood between the rugs. My dear girl, Dante Russo doesn't need to kidnap women. They throw themselves at him willingly. Then what would you call taking someone against their will? Protection, said a familiar voice from the doorway. Dante entered the library with the fluid grace of a predator, his dark eyes immediately finding mine before moving to Sophia with obvious displeasure. Sophia, I wasn't expecting you. Clearly, she replied, her tone cool but with an undercurrent of anger. I came to meet your newest acquisition. The tension in the room thickened perceptibly. I found myself caught between two powerful people, whose relationship I didn't understand, but whose animosity was palpable. Dante moved with deliberate slowness to stand between Sophia and me, a gesture that felt protective even as it reminded me of my captive status. Tessa isn't an acquisition, he said, his voice carrying a warning that made even beautiful, confident Sophia take a step back. She's under my protection. From what? Sophia laughed, but the sound was sharp with jealousy. She's nobody, Dante. A little dancer from nowhere with no family, no connections, no power. What could she possibly need protection from? From people who would use her to get to me, Dante replied, his eyes never leaving Sophia's face. People who might think that harming someone under my protection would send me a message. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Sophia's face went pale, then flushed with anger. You think I would hurt her? I think you're capable of many things when you feel threatened, Dante said calmly. And I think you should leave now, before this conversation goes somewhere we'll both regret. Sophia drew herself up to her full height, dignity wrapping around her like armor. This isn't over, Dante. Your father won't approve of you bringing strays into the family home. My father has been dead for 5 years, Dante replied with deadly quiet, and this is my home now. I'll bring whoever I choose into it. After Sophia left, trailing expensive perfume and wounded pride, the library felt enormous and quiet. Dante poured himself a drink and offered one to me, which I declined with a sharp shake of my head. Your fiancé seems lovely, I said, sarcasm dripping from every word. Ex-fiancé, he corrected, settling into the chair across from mine. As of about 6 months ago. She doesn't seem to know that. Dante's smile was rueful. Sophia has trouble accepting things that don't align with her plans. Our engagement was arranged by our families for business purposes. I ended it when I realized I wanted something more than a convenient alliance. Like kidnapping random dancers? Like finding someone who makes me want to be better than what I am. His dark eyes met mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. Someone who looks at beauty and sees art, not just price tags. Someone who's fought for everything she has, instead of having it handed to her. The sincerity in his voice was almost harder to resist than his threats had been. This version of Dante, vulnerable, almost uncertain, was far more dangerous to my resolve than the cold, controlling man who'd casually discussed his power over the city. You can't just decide I belong to you, I said, though the words came out softer than I'd intended. Can't I? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, bringing us close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Tell me, Tessa, what was your life like before last night? Working 2 jobs to afford a studio apartment with paper-thin walls? Eating ramen for dinner because you spent your grocery money on New Point shoes? Living on 4 hours of sleep because the coffee shop opens at 5 a.m. and rehearsal runs until midnight? Each word was like a perfectly aimed arrow, hitting truths I'd tried not to think about. The grinding poverty, the constant exhaustion, the slow realization that talent alone wasn't enough to guarantee success in the ballet world. That was my choice, I said weakly. Was it? Or was it just the only option you could see? He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and took my hand in his. His fingers were warm and strong, calloused in places that suggested he was no stranger to physical work, despite his obvious wealth. I can give you everything you've ever dreamed of, Tessa. Not just financial security, but opportunities that money can't usually buy. Private coaching with the best teachers in the world. Connections to companies that would kill to have a dancer of your caliber. In exchange for what? I asked, though I was afraid I already knew the answer. In exchange for letting me take care of you. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand, the simple touch sending heat shooting up my arm. For accepting that you're mine to protect, to cherish, to possess. The word possess should have sent me running, but trapped in his dark gaze, feeling the strength in his hands and the warmth of his presence, I found myself wavering. What he offered was everything I'd dreamed of during those long nights when I'd fallen asleep to the sound of sirens and neighbors arguing through the walls. And if I say no? Dante's expression grew serious, the charming mask slipping away again. Then you stay here until you understand that no isn't really an option anymore. As I said, beautiful dancer, you belong to me now. The only question is whether you'll accept that gracefully, or whether we'll have to do this the hard way. The threat was delivered so calmly, so matter-of-factly, that it took a moment to fully sink in. He wasn't giving me a choice at all. He was giving me the illusion of choice while making it clear that only one answer would be accepted. "You're insane," I whispered. "I'm in love," he corrected, bringing my hand to his lips to press a gentle kiss to my palm. "And I've never been more sane in my life." The days blurred together in a haze of luxury and confinement. Dante had been true to his word about providing everything I could possibly want, except freedom. Designer clothes appeared in the walk-in closet of what he insisted on calling our bedroom, though he'd been sleeping in the guest wing since that first night. Meals were prepared by a private chef who seemed to anticipate my every craving. There was even a fully equipped dance studio in the mansion's east wing, complete with professional bars, mirrors, and a sound system better than what we had at the Metropolitan Ballet Company. But the windows were reinforced. The doors required keycards I didn't possess, and armed men in expensive suits patrolled the grounds with the casual efficiency of professionals. No matter how beautiful the cage, it was still a cage. "You're not eating," Elena observed, as she cleared away my barely touched breakfast. Her weathered face creased with concern as she looked at the untouched croissants and fruit that would have been a feast in my old life. "I'm not hungry," I replied, staring out the dining room window at gardens that stretched to a high stone wall topped with what I was now certain was electrified wire, though it was disguised by climbing roses. "Mr. Dante, he worry about you," Elena continued, ignoring my obvious desire to be left alone. "He asks me every day if you eat, if you sleep, if you need anything. He asks about me but won't speak to me directly," I said bitterly. It had been 3 days since our confrontation in the library, and Dante had made himself scarce, appearing only at dinner where we maintained stilted conversations about books and art, while carefully avoiding any mention of my captivity. "He give you space," Elena said with the wisdom of someone who'd observed powerful men for decades. "He know you are angry, so he wait for anger to pass. The anger isn't going to pass." I turned from the window to face her directly. "Elena, you seem like a kind woman. How can you work for someone who kidnaps people?" Elena's expression grew carefully neutral, but I caught a flicker of something. Sadness, perhaps, or regret. "You think he kidnap you? But maybe you not understand full story." "Then tell me the full story," I challenged, "because from where I'm sitting, a man drugged me at a club, and another man brought me to his house against my will. What part of that am I misunderstanding?" Before Elena could answer, the dining room door opened and Marco entered, carrying what appeared to be a tablet and several manila folders. His usual easy smile was absent, replaced by an expression of grim seriousness that immediately put me on edge. "Tessa," he said, settling into the chair across from me without invitation. "We need to talk." "About what?" I remained standing, unwilling to give ground even in this small way. "About why you're really here." He opened the tablet and turned it toward me. On the screen was a photograph of a man I didn't recognize, middle-aged, balding, with the soft features of someone who'd lived well. "Do you know who this is?" I studied the image, searching my memory. "No. Should I?" "His name is Vincent Torino. He runs heroin distribution for the Santoro family, Sophia's family." Marco swiped to the next image, this one showing the same man entering what looked like the nightclub where I'd been drugged. "This was taken 2 hours before you were attacked." The word attacked sent a chill through me. I wasn't attacked. I was drugged. "You were drugged as part of an attack," Marco corrected, swiping to another image. This one showed me at the club, laughing with my fellow dancers, completely unaware of the danger surrounding me. Torino was hired to take you. The plan was to hold you for 3 days, take photographs that would be sent to Dante as a message, then kill you. My legs gave out, and I sank into the chair I'd been refusing. That's impossible. No one even knows I exist. I'm nobody. You became somebody the moment Dante started watching you. Marco's voice was gentle but implacable. For months, he attended every performance you were in. He had his driver take him past the coffee shop where you worked. He bought season tickets to the ballet for the first time in his life. People noticed. The room seemed to spin around me as the implications sank in. So, this is his fault. I'm here because he put a target on my back. You're here because he saved your life, Marco corrected. If Dante hadn't intervened when he did, you'd be dead by now. The drug they gave you wasn't just a sedative. It was a cocktail designed to make your death look like an overdose. I pressed my hands to my temples, trying to process this information. But why? What did the Santoros gain from killing me? Marco exchanged a look with Elena, who had been standing silently by the door. It's not about gain. It's about sending a message to Dante. The Santoros and the Russos have been competitors for decades. When Dante broke his engagement to Sofia, it was seen as an insult to their family. So they decided to murder an innocent woman in retaliation? My voice was rising, hysteria creeping in at the edges. They decided to hurt Dante in the most effective way possible, by taking away something he cared about. Marco closed the tablet and leaned forward, his expression earnest. Tessa, I know this is hard to understand, but in our world, showing weakness or attachment makes you vulnerable. The moment Dante's interest in you became obvious, you became a target. I stood abruptly, pacing to the window and back as I tried to make sense of this nightmare. Then let me go. If I'm not here, I can't be used against him. Where would you go? Marco asked reasonably. Back to your apartment that Vincent Torino already knows about? Back to the coffee shop where you work regular shifts? Back to the ballet company where you perform on a published schedule? Each question was like a nail in the coffin of my hopes for freedom. He was right. Returning to my old life would be like painting a target on my back. So what you're telling me is that I can never leave here. Ever. The words came out flat, emotionless, as shock numbed my system. What I'm telling you, said a familiar voice from the doorway, is that I will never let anyone hurt you. Dante entered the room with that fluid grace I was learning to recognize, dressed in a charcoal suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. His dark eyes immediately found mine, searching my face as if he could read my emotional state in my expression. How long have you been listening? I asked, anger flaring to life again. Long enough. He moved to the sideboard and poured himself coffee, his movements casual despite the tension radiating from his frame. Marco, thank you for explaining the situation. You can go. After Marco and Elena left, closing the door behind them with soft clicks that sounded like prison locks, Dante and I faced each other across the elegant dining room. The morning light streaming through the tall windows cast everything in golden hues that should have been beautiful, but felt surreal, like a painting of a life I'd never chosen. Is it true? I asked finally. All of it? Every word. Dante's voice was steady, but I could see tension in the set of his shoulders, in the careful way he held his coffee cup. I'm sorry, Tessa. I never intended for my feelings to put you in danger. Your feelings? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You don't even know me. I know that you practice alone in the studio after everyone else has gone home, working on combinations until your feet bleed. His dark eyes never left my face. I know that you send money to a children's dance program in Portland every month, even when you can barely afford groceries. I know that you cried during the final scene of Romeo and Juliet because you understood Juliet's desperation to escape a life she didn't choose. Each observation hit like a physical blow, proof of how thoroughly he'd invaded my privacy, how completely he'd studied me without my knowledge or consent. "That's not knowing me," I said, my voice shaking. "That's stalking me." "It's loving you," he corrected, setting down his cup and moving closer. "It's watching someone so beautiful, so talented, so determined to succeed despite every obstacle, and being unable to look away." Love doesn't kidnap people, Dante. Love doesn't trap them in golden cages and call it protection. He stopped just out of arm's reach, close enough that I could smell his cologne, but far enough that I didn't feel completely overwhelmed by his presence. "What would you have had me do? Let them take you? Let them kill you to spite me? You could have warned me, given me a choice." "What choice?" His voice grew harder, more commanding. "The choice to live in fear, looking over your shoulder every moment. The choice to give up dancing, give up your dreams, and disappear into witness protection. The choice to let them win." I turned away from him, unable to handle the intensity of his gaze. Outside, I could see the rose garden where Elena had told me Dante's mother used to spend her mornings before she died. Beautiful, peaceful, and completely inaccessible to me. "At least it would have been my choice," I whispered. I felt him move closer, his presence a warm pressure at my back. "Tessa, look at me." When I didn't turn around, his hand settled gently on my shoulders, his touch careful and non-threatening. "Please." Something in his voice, vulnerability beneath the command, made me face him despite my better judgment. This close, I could see the faint lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the tension in his jaw that suggested he'd been sleeping as poorly as I had. "I know you're angry," he said softly. "I know you feel trapped, and I'm sorry for that. But I need you to understand something. Keeping you here isn't just about protecting you. It's about protecting everyone you care about." "What do you mean?" "Your friend Sarah from the ballet company. She's been asking questions about where you are. If the Santoros think she knows something, she becomes a target too." His hands tightened slightly on my shoulders. "Your former roommate, the coffee shop owner who was always kind to you, the elderly woman who lives next door to your old apartment, everyone connected to you is potentially at risk." The implications crashed over me like a wave. "You're saying that by knowing me, you've endangered everyone I care about." "I'm saying that by caring about you, I've made you precious to me. And in my world, precious things need to be guarded carefully." I pulled away from his touch, needing space to think. "Your world is insane." "My world is what it is," he replied with a slight shrug. "I didn't create the rules, Tessa, but I have to live by them. And now, so do you. Unless I give up everything and everyone I've ever cared about and disappear forever. Even then, you wouldn't be safe. The Santoros have long memories and longer reach. Running would just delay the inevitable." I sank into a chair, the weight of hopelessness settling over me like a shroud. "So I'm trapped here forever." "You're protected here forever," Dante corrected, moving to kneel beside my chair so we were at eye level. "Tessa, I know this isn't the life you chose, but it could be a good life, a better life than what you had before." "Better?" I stared at him in disbelief. "I'm a prisoner. You're a woman who will never want for anything again, who will have access to the best teachers, the finest stages, opportunities that money can't usually buy." His hand covered mine where it rested on the chair arm. "You're a woman who is cherished, protected, adored, by someone who won't let me leave, by someone who would die before letting you be harmed." The intensity in his voice made my breath catch. "Tessa, I'm not asking you to love me back. Not yet. I'm asking you to let me take care of you. To accept that this is your reality now, and make the best of it. I studied his face, searching for signs of deception or manipulation. What I found instead was something that looked almost like desperation, as if my answer mattered more than anything else in the world. And if I can't? If I can never accept this? Pain flashed across his features before he controlled it. Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But for now, will you at least try? Will you let me show you that this life can have beauty in it? The part of me that had survived years of poverty and rejection, that had clawed its way from community center classes to the Metropolitan Ballet Company, wanted to keep fighting. But the larger part, the part that was exhausted from years of struggle and terrified by the revelation of how much danger I was in, was tempted by his offer. What would that look like? I asked quietly. Hope flickered in his dark eyes. It would look like you dancing again. Really dancing. Not just marking through combinations in an empty studio. It would look like dinners where we talk about books and art instead of your captivity. It would look like you choosing to be here instead of being forced to stay. I would never choose this, I said, but the words lacked conviction. Wouldn't you? His thumb traced across my knuckles, sending unwanted heat up my arm. If I had approached you 6 months ago, told you I was wealthy and powerful, and wanted to give you everything you'd ever dreamed of, would you really have said no? The question hung in the air between us, dangerous and tempting, because the truth was, I didn't know what I would have said. The life he was offering, security, opportunity, freedom from the grinding worry about rent and groceries and whether my point shoes would last another week, was everything I'd fantasized about during those long, exhausting days. That's not what happened, I said finally. No, he agreed. But it's what's happening now. The circumstances that brought us together were complicated. But we're here now, and I'm offering you the same thing. Everything you've ever wanted, in exchange for letting me care for you. I pulled my hand away from his, needing to break the connection that was making it hard to think clearly. You're asking me to give up my freedom. I'm asking you to trade one kind of freedom for another. Freedom from fear, from want, from ever having to compromise your art for survival. The seductive logic of his argument was almost irresistible. How many dancers would kill for the opportunities he was offering? How many would see this as a fairy tale rather than a nightmare? I need time, I said finally. To think. Dante nodded, rising gracefully to his feet. Of course. Take all the time you need. But Tessa, I looked up at him, struck again by how devastatingly handsome he was, how his presence seemed to fill the room. While you're thinking, remember that I'm not your enemy. I'm the man who would burn down the world to keep you safe. That has to count for something. After he left, I sat alone in the dining room, staring out at the rose garden and trying to process everything I'd learned. The worst part wasn't the revelation that my life was in danger. It was the growing realization that part of me was starting to see the appeal of Dante's offer. Security, luxury, the chance to focus solely on my art without worrying about survival. It was everything I'd dreamed of. The only price was my freedom. And increasingly, I was beginning to wonder if that freedom had ever been real anyway. The decision came to me in the dance studio at 3 a.m. I'd been unable to sleep, my mind churning over Dante's words and the impossible choice he'd presented me with. So I'd made my way to the studio, hoping that movement might bring clarity. Dancing had always been my refuge, the one place where nothing else mattered except the perfect extension of a leg, the precise placement of an arm, the story told through movement. In the studio's mirrored walls, I could see myself clearly, not as Dante's captive or the Santoro's target, but simply as a dancer. I'd been working through combinations from Giselle, losing myself in the tragic beauty of the mad scene. When I sensed his presence, Dante stood in the doorway, still dressed in the dark slacks and white shirt he'd worn to dinner, though he'd removed his jacket and tie. His hair was disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and exhaustion lined his features. "You couldn't sleep either," I observed, not stopping my movement, but acknowledging his presence. "I rarely sleep well," he admitted, moving into the studio but staying near the wall, careful not to intrude on my space. "The burdens of leadership don't make for peaceful nights." I completed the sequence and moved to the bar for cool-down stretches, hyper-aware of his eyes following my every movement. "Is that what you call it? Leadership? What would you call it?" I considered the question as I stretched my hamstring, feeling the familiar burn of muscles work to their limit. "Control. You control this house, your business, the people around you. You've taken control of my life." "Control implies dominance for its own sake," Dante said thoughtfully. "What I do is stewardship. I'm responsible for the safety and well-being of everyone under my protection. Including me now, apparently. Especially you." The way he said it, with such quiet conviction, sent an unwanted flutter through my chest. I straightened from my stretch and faced him directly. "Dante, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer." He inclined his head slightly. "Ask." "If the situation were reversed, if I had the power and you were the one being held against your will, would you accept it as gracefully as you're expecting me to?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "No. I would fight with everything I had to regain my freedom." "Then how can you expect me to just accept this?" "Because you're smarter than I am," he said simply. "Because you understand that sometimes the smartest fight is knowing when not to fight." I moved closer to him, close enough to see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, close enough to smell the cedar cologne that was becoming familiar. "And you think this is one of those times?" "I think," he said carefully, "that you're beginning to see the advantages of your situation, even if you're not ready to admit it yet." He wasn't wrong, and we both knew it. 3 days in his house had shown me luxuries I'd never dreamed of. The private chef who could prepare anything I craved. The library filled with first editions and rare books. The studio where I could dance for hours without worrying about studio rental fees. The bedroom with Egyptian cotton sheets and a mattress that felt like sleeping on clouds. "The advantages come with strings attached," I pointed out. "Everything worthwhile does." He moved closer, his presence warm and solid in the cool air of the studio. "Tessa, I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not even asking you to trust me completely. I'm asking you to stay alive and let me help you thrive." "In exchange for what, exactly? What do you get out of this arrangement?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. For a moment, his careful composure slipped, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. "I get to know that you're safe," he said finally. "I get to see you dance without worrying about whether you can afford proper nutrition or medical care. I get to watch you become everything you were meant to be. And if that's all you wanted, you'd let me leave once the threat from the Santoros is dealt with." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The threat from the Santoros will never be completely dealt with. As long as I care about you, you'll be a target. So this is permanent, forever." "It could be." He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and touched my face with devastating gentleness. "Would that really be so terrible?" The honest answer was no, and that terrified me more than any threat he could have made. Standing there in the studio where I felt most like myself, looking into the eyes of a man who clearly wanted me with an intensity that was both flattering and frightening, I could envision a life that might not be the one I'd planned, but could still be beautiful. "What about children?" I asked suddenly, the question surprising us both. Dante's hand stilled against my cheek. "What about them?" In this fantasy future you're painting, do I get to have children? A family? Or am I just supposed to be your beautiful dancer forever? Something shifted in his expression, a hunger that went deeper than physical desire. You want children? The way he asked it, as if the idea was both unexpected and deeply appealing, made my heart skip. Someday. Maybe. I don't know. But I want the option. Then you'll have it. His voice was rough with emotion. Anything you want, Tessa. Children, a family, a real marriage if that's what you choose. I'm not asking you to be my mistress or my kept woman. I'm asking you to be my partner. Your partner in what? Crime. My partner in life. His other hand came up to frame my face completely, his touch gentle but inescapable. I know my world seems dark to you, and parts of it are. But there's beauty in it too, if you know where to look. There's power in being able to help people, to protect what matters. By threatening others? Sometimes, when necessary. He didn't flinch from the ugly truth. But also by building hospitals, funding arts programs, providing opportunities for people who would never get them otherwise. Money is power, Tessa, and power can be used for good or ill. I studied his face, searching for signs of deception. What I found instead was complete sincerity. A man who genuinely believed in what he was saying. You're asking me to compromise everything I believe in. I'm asking you to expand what you believe is possible. His thumbs traced across my cheekbones, the gentle touch sending heat through my entire body. You've spent your whole life fighting just to survive. I'm offering you the chance to live. The truth in his words hit harder than any threat could have. I had been surviving rather than living, scraping by from paycheck to paycheck, always one injury or missed performance away from losing everything. I would want guarantees, I said quietly. Hope flickered in his dark eyes. Name them. No more lies. If I agree to this, I want complete honesty about your business, about the dangers, about everything. Done. I want to maintain some connection to my old life. My friends at the ballet company, my colleagues. I can't just disappear from their lives completely. He hesitated at this one. It would have to be carefully managed, supervised. But yes, we can arrange something. And I want the option to leave. The words came out in a rush. Maybe not now, while there's active danger, but someday. If this doesn't work, if I can't adapt to your world, I want the promise that you'll let me go. This time the hesitation was longer, and when he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. I will never stop you from leaving if that's what you truly want, but I will also never stop trying to change your mind. That's not exactly a promise to let me go. It's the best I can do, he said honestly. I won't lie to you, Tessa. I don't know if I'm capable of letting you walk away, but I promise that if you're truly miserable, if this life really isn't something you can accept, we'll find another solution. It wasn't the complete guarantee I wanted, but it was more honesty than I'd expected, and something in his expression told me it was the most he was capable of giving. There would be conditions on my side too, I said. Such as? I want to keep dancing, really dancing, not just practicing alone. I want access to teachers, choreographers, maybe even the chance to guest with other companies. Already arranged, he said with a slight smile. Madame Korovkin will be here tomorrow to assess your technique. She's worked with the Bolshoi and the Paris Opera Ballet. The casual way he mentioned one of the most respected ballet teachers in the world made my head spin. You already contacted her? I contacted her the day after you arrived, along with several others. His hands dropped from my face to my shoulders, his touch warm through the thin fabric of my leotard. I told you, Tessa. I want to see you become everything you were meant to be. And what if what I'm meant to be doesn't fit into your world? Then I'll expand my world to accommodate you. He said it with such simple certainty that I almost believed him. The only non-negotiable is your safety. Everything else we can work out together. I stepped back from him, needing space to think without the distraction of his touch. The studio felt enormous around us, filled with mirrors that reflected infinite versions of this moment, this choice that would define the rest of my life. If I agree to this, I said slowly, if I choose to stay and try to build something with you, it has to be a real partnership. Equal say in decisions that affect us both, not you making choices for my own good. Agreed. He paused. Within reason. There may be times when my experience with danger overrides your preferences about risk. Then we discuss it. We don't just assume you know best. We discuss it, he confirmed. I turned to look at myself in the mirror, seeing a young woman in a black leotard and pink tights, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, her life balanced on the edge of a decision that would change everything. I looked like a dancer, but I felt like someone standing at the edge of a cliff, trying to decide whether to jump. One more thing, I said without turning around. Anything. I want time. Real time, not just a few days to think it over. If I'm going to commit to this life, I need to understand it completely. I need to see your world, meet your people, understand what I'm really agreeing to. When I turned back to face him, Dante was nodding slowly. How much time? 6 months. A real trial period where we both get to see if this could actually work. And at the end of 6 months? At the end of 6 months, I'll give you my decision. Stay permanently or find another solution. He was quiet for a long moment, studying my face as if he could read my thoughts in my expression. 6 months, he agreed finally, but with conditions of my own. Such as? During those 6 months, you give this a real try. No holding back, no emotional walls designed to prove it won't work. You let me court you properly. Court me? Despite everything, I almost smiled at the old-fashioned term. Woo you, seduce you, whatever you want to call it. His own smile was slow and devastating. I want the chance to make you fall in love with me, Tessa. Not just accept me, but actually want to be here. The idea sent a thrill of fear and anticipation through me. And if I don't? If at the end of 6 months I'm still here out of necessity rather than choice? Then we'll revisit the arrangement. But I'm betting that won't be necessary. The confidence in his voice should have annoyed me, but instead it sent heat pooling low in my stomach. There was something undeniably attractive about a man who knew what he wanted and wasn't afraid to pursue it. All right, I said before I could change my mind. 6 months. But this partnership starts now. No more decisions made without consulting me. Starting now, he agreed. He moved toward me slowly, giving me time to object, and took my hands in his. Thank you, he said quietly, for being willing to try. Don't thank me yet, I warned. I might drive you crazy within a week. I'm counting on it, he said, and leaned down to press a gentle kiss to my forehead. Beautiful women should be a little dangerous. As he left me alone in the studio, I caught sight of myself in the mirror again. Same dark hair, same brown eyes, same dancer's posture. But something fundamental had shifted. I was no longer just Tessa Carmichael, struggling ballet dancer. I was Tessa Carmichael, who had just agreed to let one of the most dangerous men in the city court her. The woman in the mirror looked terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. And despite everything, despite the circumstances that had brought us together and the darkness that surrounded his world, I realized I was looking forward to seeing where this impossible arrangement would lead. 6 months to decide the rest of my life. 6 months to discover whether the man who'd kidnapped me could become the man I chose to stay with. 6 months to find out if love could bloom in the strangest of gardens. The dancer in the mirror smiled back at me, and for the first time since waking up in Dante's house, it looked genuine. The transformation began immediately. By the time I woke the next morning, the locks on my bedroom door had been removed. When I tested the French doors leading to the balcony, they opened freely onto a view of the rose garden below. The gesture was small, but significant, the difference between a prisoner and a guest. "Good morning, miss," Elena greeted me as I entered the breakfast room, her weathered face creased with what looked suspiciously like approval. "Mr. Dante. He leave early for business, but he asked me to tell you that Madame Korovkin arrives at 10. The mention of the legendary ballet teacher sent a jolt of nervous excitement through me. Irina Korovkin had trained principal dancers for companies around the world. She was notoriously selective about her private students, and the waiting list for her master classes stretched for years. "Did he say anything else?" I asked, accepting the cup of coffee Elena pressed into my hands. "He say to tell you that your first real lesson begins today." Elena's eyes twinkled with mischief. "I think he mean more than just dancing, yes?" Before I could ask what she meant by that cryptic comment, the breakfast room door opened and Marco entered, carrying what appeared to be a garment bag and several boxes. "Delivery for you," he announced, draping the garment bag over a chair. "From Dante. He said you'd need proper attire for today's activities." I unzipped the bag to reveal a stunning dress in deep sapphire blue, the fabric flowing like water through my fingers. The cut was elegant, but not ostentatious, suitable for whatever mysterious plans Dante had made. The boxes contained shoes, jewelry, and a handbag that probably cost more than I used to make in 3 months. "What activities?" I asked suspiciously. Marco's grin was answer enough. "You'll see. But you might want to eat something first. It's going to be a long day." 2 hours later, I stood in the studio wearing my most professional leotard and tights, trying not to fidget as Madame Korovkin circled me with the focused intensity of a hawk studying its prey. She was smaller than I'd expected, perhaps 5 feet tall, but her presence filled the room. Her silver hair was pulled back in a perfect chignon, and her dark eyes missed nothing. "Your turnout needs work," she said in accented English, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "Your port-de-bras is adequate, but lacks emotion. Your extensions are good, but your strength could be better." Each criticism should have stung, but coming from her, they felt like gifts. This was the kind of honest assessment I'd craved but never been able to afford. "However," she continued, moving to the piano where an accompanist I hadn't noticed before sat waiting, "you have something that cannot be taught. You understand the soul of dance, not just the mechanics." She worked me harder than I'd ever been worked before, pushing my technique to its limits and beyond. By the time she declared the session over, my leotard was soaked with sweat, and my muscles trembled with exhaustion. But I felt more alive than I had in years. "You will do," she announced as I toweled off my face. "I will return tomorrow at the same time. Do not disappoint me." After she left, I showered and changed into the blue dress Dante had sent, surprised by how perfectly it fit. The fabric moved with me like a second skin, and the color brought out the gold flecks in my brown eyes that I'd never noticed before. A soft knock at my bedroom door interrupted my primping. "Come in," I called, expecting Elena. Instead, Dante entered, and the sight of him in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit made my breath catch. He'd been handsome in casual clothes, devastating in business attire. But there was something about seeing him now, knowing that I'd agreed to let him court me, that made me hyper-aware of every detail about him. "You look breathtaking," he said, his dark eyes traveling over me with undisguised appreciation. "Though I have to say, you were equally beautiful covered in sweat in the studio." Heat rose to my cheeks at the compliment. Madame Korovkin was intense, She's the best, and she doesn't waste her time on dancers who don't have exceptional potential. He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne and see the slight lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled more than his reputation would indicate. Are you ready for the rest of your day? That depends on what the rest of my day involves. His smile was mysterious and slightly dangerous. Trust me? The question hung between us, weighted with more meaning than just the afternoon's activities. This was about more than whether I trusted him not to put me in physical danger. It was about whether I was willing to let him guide me into his world. Yes, I said, surprising myself with how easily the word came. The black Bentley waited in the circular drive, Domenico holding the door open with his usual professional courtesy. As we settled into the butter-soft leather seats, I noticed that the partition between the front and back was raised, giving us privacy. Where are we going? I asked as the car pulled through the estate's gates. To see my city, Dante replied, his hand covering mine on the seat between us. The real New York, not just the parts tourists see. Our first stop was a small restaurant in Little Italy, tucked between buildings that looked like they'd been there for a century. The owner, a round man with flour-dusted hands, greeted Dante like a long-lost son, kissing both his cheeks and speaking rapid Italian before turning to me with obvious curiosity. Giuseppe, this is Tessa, Dante said in English, his hand settling at the small of my back with casual possessiveness. Tessa, Giuseppe makes the best pasta in the city. Only because my nonna taught me her secrets, Giuseppe replied with a thick accent, taking my hand and kissing it gallantly. Welcome, beautiful lady. Any friend of Dante's is family here. The meal that followed was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Course after course of perfect pasta, each one better than the last, accompanied by wine that tasted like liquid sunshine. Giuseppe regaled us with stories of Dante as a boy, coming to the restaurant with his father, already serious and watchful even as a child. He always tipped the waiters too much, Giuseppe confided with a wink. Even when he was 12 and spending his allowance money. Some habits never change, Dante said dryly, but I could see the affection in his eyes as he looked at the older man. After lunch, we walked through the narrow streets of Little Italy, Dante pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of his childhood. I began to understand that this wasn't just a neighborhood to him. It was home in a way that his mansion, beautiful as it was, could never be. My great-grandfather came here from Sicily with nothing but the clothes on his back, he told me as we stopped before a small shrine tucked between two buildings. He worked 16-hour days in the docks and saved every penny he could. My grandfather expanded the business, my father legitimized parts of it, and I'm trying to build something that can exist in the light instead of the shadows. And the parts that can't exist in the light? His expression grew serious. Those I handle so that future generations won't have to. Our next stop was a surprise, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Dante led me through the halls with the confidence of someone intimately familiar with the collection, stopping before paintings and sculptures to share insights that revealed both his education and his genuine appreciation for beauty. You know a lot about art, I observed as we stood before a dega of ballet dancers, the irony not lost on me. I studied art history in college, he admitted, before I understood that my destiny lay elsewhere. What would you have done if you'd had a choice? He was quiet for a long moment, studying the painting with thoughtful eyes. Maybe taught. I always loved the idea of sharing knowledge, of helping people see beauty they might otherwise miss. The wistfulness in his voice made my chest tight. Here was another glimpse of the man he might have been, in a different life, with different obligations. As the afternoon wore on, I began to see a pattern in our stops. The restaurant where Dante had eaten as a child, but whose owner now sent his daughter to college on a scholarship from one of Dante's foundations. The community center where he'd learned to box, now renovated with equipment he'd donated. The small theater where we ended our tour. which had been saved from demolition by an anonymous benefactor, I was beginning to suspect was the man beside me. "This is what you meant about power being used for good," I said, as we sat in the theater's renovated lobby, watching children from the neighborhood practice a scene from Romeo and Juliet. "Partially." His eyes followed a young girl who couldn't have been more than 10, but who moved with natural grace. "Money is just a tool, Tessa. It can build or destroy, depending on the hands that wield it." "And what do your hands build?" He turned to look at me, his expression serious. "A legacy I can be proud of. A future where children like that little girl have opportunities I never dreamed of. A world where beauty and art are valued, not just profit." The sincerity in his voice was impossible to fake. This wasn't the calculated manipulation of a man trying to seduce me into compliance. This was genuine passion for something larger than himself. "And what do they destroy?" I asked quietly. "Threats to what I'm trying to build." His honesty was brutal and complete. "People who would hurt the innocent, who would destroy rather than create. Sometimes the only way to protect something beautiful is to eliminate what would corrupt it." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the children practice their scene. The little girl who'd caught Dante's attention was playing Juliet, her young voice carrying surprising emotion as she delivered the balcony scene. "She reminds me of you," Dante said softly. "That determination to perfect every gesture, to find truth in movement. She's very talented. She's also very poor. Her mother cleans offices at night to pay for these classes." He paused. "Would you like to meet her?" Before I could answer, he was rising from his seat and moving toward the small stage. I watched as he approached the children, speaking quietly to their instructor before kneeling down to the little girl's level. Whatever he said made her face light up with joy, and she immediately launched into an excited explanation of her performance. When he returned to me, the little girl followed, her eyes wide with curiosity as she looked between us. "Isabella, this is Tessa," Dante said. "She's a real ballerina." "Really?" Isabella's voice was breathless with awe. "Like in Swan Lake?" "Yes, like in Swan Lake," I confirmed, charmed by her enthusiasm. "You're a very good actress." "Mr. Dante says maybe someday I could take real dance classes too," she said hopefully. "If I keep working hard and getting good grades." I looked at Dante, understanding flooding through me. "I'm sure if you keep working hard, opportunities will come your way." As we prepared to leave, Dante spoke quietly with Isabella's instructor, and I caught sight of him pressing an envelope into the woman's hands. Scholarship funds, no doubt, ensuring that Isabella's dream of dance classes would become reality. "You do this often," I observed as we settled back into the Bentley. "Find talented children and make their dreams possible." "When I can." He shrugged, as if it were nothing unusual. "Talent should be nurtured, not wasted because of circumstances." "Is that what this is?" I gestured between us. "Are you nurturing my talent?" His laugh was rueful. "Tessa, what I feel for you goes far beyond appreciation for your talent. Though I admit, watching you dance is one of life's great pleasures." The car had stopped while we were talking, and I looked out to find we were at Lincoln Center. The Metropolitan Opera House rose before us, its arched windows glowing in the early evening light. "What are we doing here?" "Research," Dante said mysteriously, helping me from the car. "I want to show you something." He led me not to the main entrance, but around to a stage door, where a security guard nodded respectfully and waved us through. We moved through corridors I recognized from my time with the company, heading toward the backstage area of the opera house. "Dante, we can't just walk around here without permission," I protested as we passed dressing rooms and administrative offices. "We have permission," he assured me, stopping before a door marked private and producing a keycard from his jacket pocket. "Trust me." The door opened onto what appeared to be a private box overlooking the opera house stage. But this wasn't just any box. It was clearly designed for someone with significant influence. The furnishings were sumptuous, the view perfect, and there was even a private bar stocked with champagne and delicacies. "Whose box is this?" I asked, though I was beginning to suspect I knew the answer. "Mine." Dante moved to the champagne bucket and extracted a bottle with practiced ease. One of the perks of being a patron of the arts. Below us, the stage was being prepared for the evening's performance of La Traviata. Dancers and singers moved through their final rehearsals, their voices echoing in the vast space. It was a sight I'd seen many times from the wings, but never from this perspective. "It's beautiful," I breathed, moving to the box's edge to get a better view. "It's yours if you want it," Dante said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. "Not just access to it, but a real place in this world. Principal roles, guest performances, your name in lights. You can't just buy me leading roles." "I can provide opportunities," he corrected. "What you do with them depends entirely on your talent and dedication." As if to prove his point, a familiar figure appeared on the stage below. Marcus, my former partner from the Metropolitan Ballet Company, was rehearsing with a dancer I didn't recognize. They moved through a complex pas de deux with the kind of chemistry that made great partnerships legendary. "Marcus is good," Dante observed, following my gaze. "But he lacks the fire that would make him truly great. He's one of the best dancers in the company. Technically, yes, but technique without passion is just pretty movement." He handed me a champagne glass, his fingers brushing mine deliberately. "You have both technique and passion. That's what makes you extraordinary." The compliment should have pleased me, but instead I felt a pang of loss for the life I'd left behind. "I miss it," I admitted. "The company, the routine, even the stress of auditions and reviews." "You don't have to miss it," Dante said gently. "Not permanently. Once the immediate danger passes, arrangements can be made. Guest performances, special engagements. Your career doesn't have to end because you're with me." "But it would change. Everything would change." "Yes," he agreed. "It would change. The question is whether the changes would be worth what you'd gain." As we watched the rehearsal below, I found myself imagining what it would be like to dance on that stage again, but this time without worrying about whether I could afford next month's rent or whether an injury would mean the end of everything. There was something seductive about the idea of pursuing art for its own sake, without the constant pressure of survival. "The 6 months?" I said suddenly. "What exactly do they involve?" Dante turned to face me fully, his expression serious. "Whatever you want them to involve. I told you I wanted to court you properly. That means learning what makes you happy, what you need, what you dream about when you think no one is listening. And if what makes me happy is incompatible with your world, then we'll find a way to make it compatible." His certainty was both reassuring and slightly unsettling. "I'm a resourceful man, Tessa. There's very little I can't arrange if I set my mind to it." "Even freedom?" "Even freedom, if that's what you ultimately choose." His voice was steady, but I caught the flicker of pain in his eyes at the thought. "But I'm betting that by the end of 6 months, freedom won't be what you're thinking about." "What will I be thinking about?" He moved closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body, could smell the cedar cologne that was becoming achingly familiar. "You'll be thinking about whether you can imagine your life without me in it." The confidence in his voice sent heat pooling low in my stomach. There was something undeniably attractive about a man who knew what he wanted and wasn't afraid to pursue it with everything he had. "And if I can?" I challenged. "If at the end of 6 months, I still want to leave, then I'll spend the rest of my life regretting that I wasn't enough to make you stay." His hand came up to cup my face, thumb tracing across my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "But I don't think that's going to happen. You sound very sure of yourself." "I'm sure of what I feel for you," he corrected. "And I'm betting that given the chance, you'll feel it too." Before I could respond, his lips met mine in a kiss that was nothing like the gentle, questioning kisses we'd shared before. This was possession and promise combined, a claiming that left no doubt about his intentions. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. 6 months, Tessa," he murmured. "Let me show you what our life could be like." Looking into his dark eyes, feeling the strength of his hands and the warmth of his body, I realized that I was no longer thinking about the 6 months as a trial period to endure. I was thinking about them as an adventure to embrace. And that shift in perspective was perhaps the most dangerous thing of all. 3 months into our arrangement, I realized I was in love with him. Not the desperate, consuming passion of fairy tales, but something deeper and more dangerous. The quiet certainty that my life had become fundamentally incomplete when he wasn't in it. The realization hit me during a performance at a private gala Dante had arranged. I was dancing Juliet in excerpts from Romeo and Juliet, performing for an intimate audience of art patrons and cultural elite in the ballroom of his mansion. As I moved through the balcony scene, my eyes found his in the crowd, and the intensity of his gaze made my heart skip. He watched me like I was the only person in the room, like my movement was the most important thing in the world. The devotion in his expression was so raw, so complete, that I nearly missed my next step. When the performance ended and he rose to his feet, leading the applause with obvious pride, I understood with crystal clarity that I was no longer dancing for the audience. I was dancing for him. Later that night, as guests mingled over champagne and catered delicacies, I found myself studying Dante as he moved through the crowd. In 3 months, I'd learned to read the subtle variations in his demeanor. The way his smile became genuine when he spoke with Giuseppe about his grandson's college acceptance. The slight tension that entered his shoulders when Marco whispered updates about business matters. The soft pride that lit his eyes whenever someone complimented my performance. "You're staring," said a familiar voice beside me. I turned to find Sarah, my former colleague from the Metropolitan Ballet Company, holding a glass of champagne and wearing a dress that probably cost more than her monthly salary. "Sarah." I embraced her tightly, surprised by how much I'd missed her friendship. Dante had kept his promise about maintaining connections to my old life, though these meetings were carefully orchestrated and always supervised. "I'm so glad you could come." "Are you kidding?" When I got an invitation to a private performance by Tessa Carmichael in the home of one of the city's most eligible bachelors, I wasn't going to miss it. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity as she looked around the opulent ballroom. "Though I have to say, this is quite the setup you've got here." "It's complicated," I said, the understatement of the century. "I'll bet it is." Sarah's expression grew more serious. "Tess, are you happy? Really happy? Because from the outside, this looks like a fairy tale, but I know you. You wouldn't disappear from your life for just anyone." Before I could answer, Dante appeared at my side with that silent grace I'd come to expect. "Sarah, isn't it? Tess has told me so much about you." "All good things, I hope," Sarah replied, though I could see her assessing him with the sharp intelligence that made her such a good dancer. She was trying to figure out what kind of man could make me abandon everything I'd worked for. "Only the best," Dante assured her. "Tessa values loyalty very highly, and she speaks of you as someone who was there during the difficult times." "We looked out for each other," Sarah agreed. "That's what friends do." There was something in the exchange, a subtle tension I couldn't quite identify. Dante's smile remained charming, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes that suggested he was more alert than he appeared. "Sarah, would you excuse us for a moment?" he asked politely. "I need to steal Tessa away for introductions." As he guided me toward a group of distinguished-looking patrons, his hand settled at the small of my back, with the possessive familiarity that had become second nature. "Is everything all right?" I asked quietly. "Everything's fine," he assured me, but something in his tone suggested otherwise. "Just some business matters that need attention." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations with potential donors and art enthusiasts. Several mentioned opportunities for future performances, guest appearances with prestigious companies, collaborations with renowned choreographers. The kind of career-making connections I'd dreamed about for years were being offered to me casually, as if they were party favors. It should have been exhilarating, but I found myself distracted by the nagging sense that something was wrong. Dante's attention seemed divided, his responses slightly delayed as if he were listening to something else entirely. Marco appeared at his elbow several times throughout the evening, whispering updates that made Dante's expression grow progressively more grim. By the time the last guest departed, near midnight, the tension radiating from Dante was palpable. He walked Sarah to her car personally, a courtesy that seemed excessive until I noticed the way his security detail positioned themselves around the perimeter. "Dante," I said when he returned to the house, finding me in the library where I'd retreated to process the evening. "What's going on?" He moved to the bar and poured himself a whiskey, his movements controlled but tight with stress. "There's been a development with the Santoro situation." Ice formed in the pit of my stomach. For weeks, the threat from Sophia's family had seemed distant, manageable. Dante had assured me that his people were handling it, that I was safe as long as I stayed within his protection. What kind of development? Intelligence suggests they're planning something more direct. He turned to face me, his expression carefully controlled. The passive surveillance, the occasional probing, it's escalating. Escalating how? "Marco received word tonight that they've been asking questions about your friend Sarah. Her schedule, her habits, where she goes when she's not at the company." The words hit me like a physical blow. "They're going to hurt her?" "They're going to use her to draw you out," Dante corrected grimly. "Create a situation where you feel compelled to leave the safety of my protection." I sank into one of the leather armchairs, the full implications crashing over me. This is my fault. I insisted on maintaining contact with my old life, and now Sarah's in danger because of me. "This is not your fault," Dante said firmly, moving to kneel beside my chair. "This is the Santoros trying to force my hand by threatening someone you care about." "Then we have to warn her. We have to tell her what's happening." "We will." Marco is already arranging protection for her, though she won't know about it. And I'm having her apartment moved to a more secure building under the pretense of a company relocation bonus. The casual way he rearranged someone else's life should have bothered me, but all I could feel was gratitude that he was taking Sarah's safety seriously. "What else?" I asked, recognizing that there was more he wasn't telling me. Dante's expression grew even more serious. "There's something else. About your friend. Marco noticed something tonight that concerns him." "What do you mean?" The question she was asking, the way she was observing the house, the security arrangements, it was thorough, more thorough than simple curiosity would explain. The implication took a moment to sink in. When it did, I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "You think Sarah is working with them?" "I think Sarah might not be who you think she is," Dante said gently. "I'm having her background investigated more thoroughly, but there are some inconsistencies in her story that are troubling." "No." I stood abruptly, pacing to the window and back. "No, that's impossible. I've known Sarah for 3 years. We've been through everything together. Auditions, rejections, celebrations. She's my best friend. 3 years is a long time to maintain a cover identity if someone was determined enough," Dante pointed out. "And what better way to get close to you than to pose as a struggling dancer with similar circumstances? You're wrong." But even as I said it, doubts were creeping in. Sarah's sudden appearance in my life right after I'd joined the Metropolitan Ballet Company. The way she always seemed to know exactly what to say to keep me grounded and focused. Her persistent questions about my personal life, my dreams, my fears. I hope I am, Dante said sincerely. I truly hope I'm wrong about this. But until we know for certain, we have to assume that tonight's performance served more than one purpose. What do you mean? I mean that if Sarah is working for the Santoros, then they now have detailed intelligence about this house, about my security arrangements, about the people in my organization. His voice was grim. They have everything they need to plan an assault. The word assault sent terror shooting through me. An assault on the house? On us? On you specifically. I'm betting they're planning to take you during a moment when you feel safe and comfortable. When your guard is down because you're surrounded by beauty and art and everything that makes you happy. But why now? Why after 3 months? Dante's smile was bitter. Because 3 months is exactly how long it takes for someone to fall in love. They're counting on the fact that you care about me now, that you wouldn't want to see me hurt. They're planning to use that against both of us. The accuracy of his assessment was terrifying because he was absolutely right. 3 months ago, I would have been looking for any opportunity to escape. Now, the thought of anything happening to him made me feel physically ill. What do? We prepare. Dante moved to his desk and opened a drawer, withdrawing what appeared to be a small pistol. And you learn to protect yourself. I stared at the weapon in horror. I can't. I don't know how to use that. You're going to learn. Tonight. His voice brooked no argument. Tessa, I need you to understand something. The game has changed. This isn't about keeping you safe in a comfortable prison anymore. This is about keeping you alive in a war zone. A war zone? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. This is supposed to be your home, your sanctuary. Home is wherever you are, Dante said simply, and I will defend it with everything I have. But I need you to be able to defend yourself too, because there might come a moment when I can't be there to protect you. The thought of being without his protection, of facing the Santoros alone, sent panic clawing up my throat. Dante, I'm scared. Good, he said, surprising me. Fear will keep you alive. Complacency will get you killed. He moved toward me, the gun still in his hand but pointed carefully away. I know this isn't the life you chose, and I know you never wanted to be part of this world. But you're here now, and the people who want to hurt you don't care about your innocence or your reluctance to be involved. If I hadn't agreed to stay, if I'd insisted on leaving when you first brought me here, would Sarah still be safe? No, Dante said without hesitation. They would have taken you from your apartment, tortured you for information about me, and killed you when they were done. At least this way, you have a chance. Some choice. It's the only choice any of us have. Fight or die. He set the gun on the table between us. I'm asking you to fight, Tessa, not just for yourself, but for us, for the future we could have if we survive this. I looked at the weapon, small and deadly on the polished wood surface. Everything in me recoiled from the idea of violence, from the thought that my hands, trained to create beauty through movement, might be used to harm another person. I don't know if I can, I whispered. You can, Dante said with absolute certainty. You're stronger than you know. You've already survived poverty, rejection, and me taking over your life. You can survive this too. And if I can't, if I freeze or miss, or just can't bring myself to pull the trigger, his hands framed my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. Then I'll die protecting you, and it will have been worth it. The simple declaration, delivered without drama or fanfare, broke something open in my chest. This man, who commanded an empire through fear and respect, who could buy and sell lives with a phone call, was willing to die for a dancer he'd known for 3 months. Don't say that, I said, my voice breaking. Don't even think it. Then help me make sure it doesn't come to that. His thumbs traced across my cheekbones. wiping away tears I hadn't realized I was shedding. Learn to protect yourself so I can focus on protecting us both. I looked at the gun again, then back at his face. The face I'd come to love, marked by lines of stress and exhaustion as he tried to keep me safe in an increasingly dangerous world. "Okay," I said finally. "Teach me." Relief flooded his expression. "We'll start with basic safety and handling, then target practice in the basement range." "You have a shooting range in your basement?" "I have a lot of things in my basement that I hope you'll never need to see." His smile was rueful. "But tonight, it's going to keep you alive." As we moved toward the door, Dante paused and turned back to me. "Tessa, there's something else you need to know." "More bad news?" "A decision you need to make." His expression was more serious than I'd ever seen it. "If the Santoros are planning an assault, there's a good chance some of my people won't survive it. And there's a chance I won't survive it either." "Dante, let me finish," he interrupted gently. "If something happens to me, Marco has instructions to get you to a safe house and then out of the country. New identity, new life, enough money to disappear forever. You could be free." The offer should have been tempting. Complete freedom, financial security, the chance to start over somewhere the Santoro family could never find me. Instead, it felt like a death sentence. "I don't want to be free if you're not with me," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. Something blazed in his dark eyes. Triumph, perhaps, or just overwhelming relief. "Are you sure? Because once we go down to that basement, once I teach you to fight for this life we're building, there's no going back. You'll be choosing my world completely." I thought about Sarah, who might have been a lie from the beginning. About the Metropolitan Ballet Company, which seemed like a memory from someone else's life. About the small apartment with thin walls and unreliable heat that I'd once called home. Then I looked at Dante, this dangerous, complicated man who read me bedtime stories from Italian poetry and bought little girls' dance lessons and looked at me like I was the most precious thing in his world. "I choose you," I said simply. "Whatever that means, whatever it costs. I choose you." His kiss was fierce and desperate, full of promises and threats and absolute devotion. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "Then let's go to war," he murmured. "Together." As we walked toward the basement and whatever transformation awaited me there, I realized that the 6-month trial period had become irrelevant. I wasn't staying with Dante because I had no other choice anymore. I was staying because choosing him, choosing this dangerous and beautiful life, was the first real choice I'd made since he'd carried me out of that nightclub. The dancer who had been afraid of her own shadow was about to learn to fight for her future. And somehow, that felt like the most natural thing in the world.